Hello and welcome to the channel. If you are a foreigner in Brazil or you're just curious about how criminal investigations work in Brazil, you are in the right place. My name is Thais Pinheiro and I'm a criminal and white-collar attorney here in Brazil. Today I'm going to break down how investigations are conducted in Brazil, what authorities are involved, and what a foreigner that is involved in an investigation needs to know. Let's begin with how investigations actually start in Brazil. An investigation can be triggered in several different ways. It can be triggered by an arrest when the person is caught red-handed, will be called in flagrante, or it can be started by, for example, a police report, either by a witness, by a victim. It can start also from information from national or foreign authorities. There are several different ways. The most important thing is that either the public prosecutor or the police know there's a crime going on or that it happened, and then they will start the investigation. It is important to note that not all information from authorities or police reports actually are investigated by the police. The reason for this is that not everything is a crime or not everything can be started by the police without a person pressing charges. For example, if you crash the car in Brazil, you should do a police report. The police report is most likely not criminal if there are no victims involved. There are some cases in which it can be considered criminal, but usually fender bender is not criminal. Another example, if a victim of fraud files a police report but doesn't go to the police to press charges, in this case, the police shouldn't start the investigation because this crime specifically, you need to press charges. There are some instances in which the police actually starts the investigation, and that is something you should talk to your lawyer about. But who actually conducts the investigation? In most cases, the investigation is either conducted by the federal police or by the state police, which is called the civil police, Polícia Civil. The federal police and the civil police have different attributions, and it's not related with the harshness or how high the penalty is. There are some crimes that are on a state level that have a harsher penalty than those on the federal level and vice versa. Usually the crimes can be either investigated by state or federal police depending on how they occurred. For example, if you have a case of drug trafficking, a person who traffics drugs in the state level, in the city, that person will most likely be investigated by the state police, by the civil police. If the person traffics drugs internationally across borders, in that case, the federal police will investigate. The same goes for money laundering. If you have a case of money laundering inside of Brazil, that will go to the state police. If it crosses borders, it will go to the federal police. It's not always if a crime crossed borders that it will define if the federal police will investigate. There are some cases in which the law defines, for example, crimes against the financial system. There are also instances in which a crime is committed against a federal institution that will go to the federal police. It's not always black and white, and there are many discussions in the court on whether a case should go to the federal or to the state police. But how is an investigation actually conducted? After the police knows that the crime happened or is occurring, they will open a police investigation. And they can either investigate under seal in more complex cases, or they can just openly investigate the case. Let's start by the simpler cases. The police opens the investigation and starts gathering evidence. What evidence is gathered in this situation? They can get information regarding transactions that are under suspicion of money laundering. They may gather information from companies regarding a person, so their address, their name, other information that they may have provided to companies. They may also summon witnesses, and the police may also request data that is considered confidential, that needs a court order to obtain. So we're talking about actual bank statements, statements regarding their internal revenue, IP addresses, even data collected by their fund company. Usually in the simpler cases, the person will know they are under investigation when they receive a police summons. That can either be in the beginning of the investigation or towards the end. When a person receives a police summons, they will not know if they are a witness, they are a victim, or if they're under investigation. And if they go to the police, they may also not know, because the police only considers a person a suspect, a formal suspect, in the end of the investigation. So in the beginning, usually they're just hearing people that might possibly be involved. Let's talk about the more complex cases, which are the cases that involve a raid. In these cases, the police will start the investigation under seal. They will collect all types of information, exactly as I said before. So they can get information with phone companies, they can request court orders to obtain further information on bank statements, internal revenue. You can obtain all types of information, and even information stored, for example, on Google Drive. The police will then, after analyzing all the data, all the evidence that they have obtained, they can decide that they need information from a person's computer, a person's smartphone. What will they do? Request a court order for a search and seizure for a raid. In these cases, especially when it involves some type of financial loss, either for the victim or the state, the police will not only request the court order for a search and seizure, they may request the seizing of assets of the person under investigation. So right when they decide to do the raid, on the exact day in the morning, the banks will block all the person's accounts, all their assets, and the police will knock on their door to obtain all the information, all the goods that they think should be apprehended for the investigation. Since everything's under seal, the people who are investigated usually only know they're under investigation once the police knocks on their door. After the raid, which in Brazil we called an operation, the investigation will be open for the defenses. So the lawyers, the attorneys of the people under investigation that suffer the raid, they may request access to the police investigation. By our Supreme Court order, we are allowed to access everything of the investigation unless there's something going on, some kind of measure that is still under seal. In this part of the investigation, the federal police is going to analyze everything they have apprehended, everything they have seized. So computers, smartphones, other documents that were at the person's house, and they may also summon people for questioning, either if they're under investigation or if they're potential witnesses or even victims in the case. Now let's talk about what happens at the end of an investigation, either in the simpler or the more complex cases. The police may do what we call an indiciamento, which is nothing more than considering a person formally a suspect of the crime. Some people wrongly translate this to indictment. It is not an indictment. The police may do an indiciamento or they may not. Whether they do it or not does not mean that the person will be prosecuted or not. It has absolutely no relation. Because after they end the investigation, either doing or not the indiciamento, they will do a final report. The final report basically reports everything that happened in the investigation, and they send that to the public prosecutor. After the prosecutor receives the final report, they will analyze everything that happened in the case and will have their own convictions. They may request further investigation, so request some things that the police should do in order to end the investigation. So they may request just further investigation. They may decide to close the case, archive the investigation, or they may either offer some kind of deal for the people involved, or even charge some people, which may be the people that the police decided to do the indiciamento or may not. There are some cases in which people don't even do a deposition at the police or not even summoned by the police, and they are charged on the case that was under investigation. So anything can happen when it comes to what the public prosecutor decides. And that is how the investigation ends. Let's talk about what foreigners should know about an investigation in Brazil. First thing you should know is that you do have the right to legal representation. So, if possible, it is important to hire a lawyer during the investigations. A public defender will not be available. Second, a language can be a barrier during an investigation, and police should provide an interpreter. It is important to note that sometimes the police don't believe that the person doesn't speak Portuguese, especially if they have lived very long in Brazil. So it is important to have the lawyer, as I've said before, exactly to show the police that the person doesn't speak and request an interpreter. It's not something that is done automatically. Third, you may request to give a statement to the police. As I've said before, the police may summon witnesses or people under investigation. In this case, you should know what the investigation is about before going to the police. That way you are prepared, you can present documents. And it's also important to go with an attorney because the police usually doesn't film the depositions. In the federal police, there are police that do film it. In the state police, it's more rare. So what the police will do is actually write down a summary of what was said by the person. And sometimes the police doesn't understand exactly what the person said or writes down something that is ambiguous and could be misinterpreted. So it's very important for you when you're going to give a statement to have someone that actually understands the law and can read the statement very well and make sure that what was said is what is written down. Detention before a person is convicted in Brazil, it is the exception and not the rule. So what foreigners should know about the detention? There are several different situations in which a person should be detained, but foreigners should know of 3 specific rules. Destruction of evidence. If the evidence is being destructed by the person, they may be detained. If the person is fleeing the country. A person under investigation or involved in an investigation may travel if the court didn't impose restrictions. But there are some situations in which the court understands that the person is not traveling, but they are fleeing the country. And it is very important to talk to your attorney before you travel. That way you are aligned on whether that could be misinterpreted or not by the authorities. The third, and very important, is threatening witnesses. So if a person talks to a witness and the witness feels threatened, they may go to the court and the court may detain that person. So those are basically the main 3 things that people, especially foreigners, should know about being detained before a sentencing. The public prosecutor may offer some types of deals. There are deals for misdemeanors and minor offenses, and there's a deal that is done quite frequently in Brazil that is a non-prosecution agreement. You should talk to your lawyer before accepting or doing any type of deal with the public prosecutor. There is a type of plea deal in Brazil, but that is reserved for more complex cases, and you should always talk to your lawyer before thinking of offering or talking to the public prosecutor regarding this type of deal. Finally, criminal investigations can take time. It can take from a few weeks to months or even years. We have a police investigation at our office today that is 5 years old. That is not the rule. Usually we're talking about 1 to 2 years. There are some cases in which the police work really fast and the investigation takes much less time, so a few months. And there are cases that are much less complex than can end the investigation right on the spot, especially when a person is caught red-handed. I hope that you found this information helpful. All my details are down below, and you can also access our website and our information from the QR code on the screen. And we'll see you on the next video.